So you are navigating a sexual world that has 4 fundamental classes in it, not 2. You have to interact with obedient women, obedient men, and disobedient men. The lay of the land can get pretty confusing because the obedient and disobedient from each sex share certain things in common, and they are wildly divergent in other areas. You need to know which is which. This setup has created an opportunity for beta pastors to get in there and muddy the waters. They can say, for example, that obedient women want a man who is quote-unquote a servant leader, but what they mean by this is a man who leads by serving instead of what they ought to be pointing to, which is the more biblical pattern of serving by leading. A godly and obedient Christian woman is going to want a man who is capable of standing up to her. This is because she is evaluating the strength of his backbone. If he cannot stand up to her, then she knows instinctively that he won't be able to stand up for her. She knows this in her bones. She wants a masculine guy, one she can look up to and respect. That is the creational norm. That is how God made the world. If God tells Christian women to respect their husbands, and he does, Ephesians 5:33, then an intelligent Christian woman is going to want a man who does not make that respect an arduous or difficult task. But things can get confusing because the chances are good that if she grew up in evangelical circles, the sexual catechism she learned might be full of references to quote-unquote marrying your best friend, or quote-unquote servant leadership, and quote-unquote the most potent aphrodisiac is when a man vacuums and does the dishes. In short, she may have learned all the beta bromides and simply think that this is what the scriptures teach, but it is not. It is simply what a conspiracy of effeminate MDivs have been teaching. At the same time, she really does want to live the way God wants her to live, so it is your job to mess with the categories. The confusion created by this kind of scenario is, I believe, what tripped up your ex-girlfriend. If she had a basic need for masculine assertiveness and was not getting that from you, she could easily be tempted by an ungodly form of masculine assertiveness in the person of the jerk she wound up with. If someone is in a desert, dying of thirst, and they come across a pond that has posted signs about possible toxic waste contaminating the water, depending on how thirsty they are, they could easily be tempted despite the warning signs. And here's the difference between what a woman wants and what she says she wants. In the final weeks of your relationship, she explicitly told you that what she wanted from you was more sympathy, more sensitivity, and more understanding. And so you busied yourself with ginning up more sympathy, more sensitivity, and more understanding, all to no avail. So then she breaks up with you and goes on to team up with a guy with half the sympathy, a quarter of the sensitivity, and no understanding. And there you are, scratching your head. But she was not deliberately lying to you. She had been lied to just as you have been lied to. The lies started up higher in the teaching hierarchy. But whatever the cause, there was a decided gap between what she said she wanted and what she actually wanted. You are going to face the same issues with Lauren. Believe me, trust me. At some point in the very near future, she is going to test you. By this, I do not mean that she will consciously think something like, we have had our 4th date, so it is time for me to test Dawson. The chances are pretty good that she will be as unaware of the formal test as you would otherwise be. But if you listen to your uncle, you will not be unaware of it. If you listen to your uncle, you will be prepared. And her testing you is not nefarious. It is a prudent thing to do. I alluded to this in an earlier letter. If you want her to walk across the frozen lake of your character, she has every right to know if the ice is thicker than 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to walk you through a scenario here and then state what I think that mysterious kappa element is. And that should do us for this round. You should already know if she has a violent dislike of any particular food, and if you don't, you should check. She'll say something like, no, I like all kinds. Then you should say, great, I'll make reservations for somewhere nice. While you are pulling into the parking lot of that nice Chinese place, she will say something like, come to think of it, she really would prefer Mexican. This is your test. This is the moment. You need to say, without the slightest trace of irritation, that you would be happy to do Mexican next time, but that your reservations are for here. This tells her 2 things. First, it tells her that you are not a pushover, and it also tells her that there will be a next time. And you hop out of the car and open the door for her. I should mention in passing here that I know a number of married men who, because they failed at this point, can only stand up to their wives by getting into sin. They get angry or sullen or go silent or they flop in some other way. That is the worst. And the way they got themselves into that mess is by listening to the devil, abdicating themselves into a bad jam corner in the first place, and then they ask the devil to get them out of it. But you can't sin your way out of a situation that you sinned your way into. If you sin your way into a bad situation by abdication, then surliness and bad grace won't get you out. So cheerful Chinese it is then. You'll be tempted to think that you don't care whether or not you have Mexican or Chinese. What counts is spending time with her. Of course you don't care. She doesn't care either. What she actually cares about, whether consciously or not, is finding a guy who isn't pliable. The issue isn't the food. Of course she wants a guy who's amiable, but that is not the same thing as pliable. So don't be a pliable goober. And this brings us to the mysterious element I've been alluding to. What makes a man attractive to a woman is the same thing that makes him attractive to women generally. You are not meeting one another as the only 2 people on a desert island. This is all happening in a social setting. There are other girls. There are other guys. People are watching. And when Lauren discovers that you have the horsepower to lead her, she realizes that you would also have the horsepower to lead other women too. And she begins to suspect that the others have probably noticed that fact. You have become, to use the parlance, a catch. This is a reality that believers and unbelievers respond to differently. In the world of pagans, there are flirtation games, attempts to provoke jealousies, overt comparisons, and such like. And I'm not talking about playing any of those sexual head games. What I'm saying is simpler than that. You have a circle of acquaintances and friends. It would be lawful for you to ask any number of girls out. You should comport yourself in such a way as that the average woman in your circle would be interested in accepting the offer if you were to ask her out. And as a Christian, you don't do this by flirting with all of them. Rather, you do it by standing up straight, walking into a room with confidence, tackling hard things, working with your hands, knowing your own mind, and getting Lauren to try the almond chicken. Your Uncle Douglas.